Welcome back, everyone, to the Around the Block podcast from Coinbase. I'm Justin Mart.
And I'm Catherine Wu.
So what are we getting into on this one?
Okay, so this one feels really near and dear to my heart because over the pandemic, everyone got into crazy hobbies.
Yes.
I got a PlayStation at the beginning, and I got really into gaming. Like, I've never played games growing up, but somehow over whether it was boredom or just wanting to escape reality, I got really into playing like all kinds of games. I never thought I would be a gamer, but here we are.
Yeah.
And now I spend all my free time playing games.
You have an interesting definition of crazy hobbies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's not so crazy, but it is probably a pretty big hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as someone who works in crypto full time, who also is a, new gamer, today we're talking about the intersection of crypto and gaming.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I am not necessarily a gamer. Little 12-year-old Justin will be really mad hearing me say that now, but I'm not a gamer anymore. Obviously, I know crypto.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of questions. This is an interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
When we say crypto and gaming, what is it that we mean exactly? Like, how do you combine crypto and gaming?
So I'm hoping today we kind of find like a middle ground between this is ridiculous and makes no sense and like actually this is the future.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I thought was really interesting about our conversation last time with G Money was when we were talking about NFTs, he mentioned, as NFTs and gaming was perhaps the next big unlock, and we never got to really talk about that.
Yeah, I didn't get to press on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if crypto and gaming is a solution without a problem.
That's a good question. I mean, I kind of go back and forth between it, because as someone who plays games, I play a lot of like, obviously, PlayStation specific, but they're all like closed games, right? Like I don't really expect to take my character out of my PlayStation and move it to somewhere else. So like I don't have that, and I enjoy it even, without that sort of like interoperability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think crypto, one of the most fascinating parts of crypto is like you should technically be able to take your assets and move it anywhere else, right? And like maybe it's actually more than that. And I think it is, right? Like as we've seen this year with the rise of Axie Infinity, which I know you've looked into.
Another big topic, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, you're into video games. I'm more into like board games / strategy games. So think chess.
Yeah.
If you ever hear me denigrate nerds, smack me because I'm a nerd. So it means I'm just insulting myself, frankly. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of in the back of my mind wondering like, all right, like at some point, are there going to be, crypto mechanics that make sense in board games? Or traditionally games that don't have an online or digital presence? Like, will crypto ever cross that chasm? We'll go into the physical too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably years away, but, a lot to tease on here.
But what I do appreciate about both NFTs and also games is that they're inherently just not very, like, serious, topics, right? Like, and I think that makes it almost more approachable from, like, a crypto lens.
If crypto and gaming makes sense, it could onboard a ton of people because they don't have to be intimidated by the complexity.
Yeah.
They're just getting involved by playing a game.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're onboarded to the entire crypto universe, right? That's super powerful. I'm excited to talk to Amy. I feel like I have a lot to learn. Again, as like the non-gamer here, I've got a lot of questions, right? But who is Amy? What's she do? Why is she good here?
So I was excited to ask Amy to come on because, Amy currently is a partner at Lightspeed Venture Partners. They're a venture capital firm really known for their consumer bets. So, for example, they famously invested in Snapchat during its earliest round. So really deep, consumer DNA. And Amy herself, she's covered gaming at her last role at Insight. And before that, at consumer-facing sort of like companies. So I think like with her background in consumer, like she really understands consumer, she really understands gaming. And now she's at Lightspeed really digging into gaming, but specifically in the crypto context. I think her insights would be really amazing.
Awesome. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk to Amy Wu.
So first of all, welcome to the show. Before you came on, Justin and I were already like, oh my gosh, like what do we want Amy to answer? And it's a long list of questions, but what I wanted to kind of like open with, and this is where we got stuck and we were like, okay, let's wait for Amy to get on the line, was we were talking about like crypto and gaming. It was like, okay, whoa, like what is crypto and gaming? And secondly, like, is it one of those things where it's like, it's not a problem and we're just like forcing a solution on it?
Yeah, that's a really good question and one that has, I think, evolved quite a bit over the last year. So I think some people think of crypto gaming as, using NFTs in games, but I think the definition can be so much deeper than that. So I think about it as just the use of blockchain technology in gaming. And so then if you broaden that definition, there's the tactical reasons for why some game studio, a developer might use blockchain tech. And then there's also the philosophical reasons. The tactical ones would be, how do you keep a community engaged? Drop some, pre-launch advertising, marketing, etc. But actually being able to do an NFT drop is truly just like a much better way to engage your community. And some early games have actually started doing that. Maybe getting over to the philosophical side of it.
Yeah.
This goes back to kind of what's going on between Web 2 and Web 3, right? Still a lot of studios I talk to right now have some questions around, well, I can still do most of this, in Web 2.
Yeah.
But philosophically, like, players have, I think, kind of reacted against a centralized gaming studio controlling gameplay, controlling the items, and also, taking the majority of the economics for some time, and have wanted to get ownership and more say in what's going on in the game. That's why, like, modding has been such a huge category. Modding has had a history of decades, right? Like, and so most famously, I think League of Legends was created via a Warcraft 3 mod, for example. So this, I think that's why there was such a natural sort of affinity for the idea of ownership in gaming, that you can own an item as a player. In the NFT blockchain gaming world, the player actually owns that item. And that is a pretty important, I think, philosophical shift that is meaningful for a number of players. And so this concept is beginning to take fire, and I think will only become a more and more of like a resounding kind of paradigm shift in players. But also, just again, like, pragmatically, when you do an NFT drop and the player is getting kind of like an item with scarcity, it immediately has value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will go and start trading it, but actually some of the game studios that I hear where they really are restricting each wallet to get one NFT, they're seeing the phenomenon of players are not wanting to sell that because they're ascribing value to it. They're owning an early item, and they don't want to sell it. And so I think that kind of goes to players have a lot of ascribe a lot of value towards items that they can use in game, because again, creates a significance to it that actually just selling items in a game previously, I think, didn't have quite as much.
Yeah.
As you involve the community, like, and I love that you spoke to modding culture, because I think that really is like why games live on for a really, really long time, right? It's because you have all these fans who are so excited about like going in and like putting their own twist on a game and like really feeling like they're like an owner, right?
Yeah.
Like have ownership over their own gaming experience, right? And I think the other thing is also around like, ownership, which is that like I'm a big gamer, as we know, and like I get emotionally attached to like rare guns I find like out in the open, right? And like, especially if I can customize it, like I don't want to, like I will, for example, like, and this is a common like gaming mechanism, right? It's like you want to go and make your like inventory bigger, so you got to go like kill these like rare pigs or something, and because I don't want to throw away my gun.
Yeah.
And I think like the emotional ownership attachment, it's all so deep in like human psychology and the way gamers approach it.
It's a psychology thing, right? I mean, what they're really tapping into is just the idea that this is rarity, right? It's, there's only so many of these things, plus usable in a game, and people get attached to it when they play the game more. Mm-hmm. It's a hook on psychology. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why we've always thought, with the NFT, the rise of NFT's been around for some years, but there was a question of, okay, so you buy it, and then what happens? You can trade it, you can speculate on it, but there's actually a few use cases for it, and we believed that, since the beginning of the year, kind of like seeing kind of how the space evolved with the first NFT rally in Q1, really, that gaming is probably going to be the best use case for it because of this natural intersection with usage.
So maybe that's like a good time now to bring up Axie Infinity, because Axie has succeeded, but it doesn't really actually touch on any of sort of what we talked about. So maybe actually to step back, what is Axie Infinity?
Why is it so popular?
Yeah, Axie Infinity, trailblazing in the blockchain gaming world.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of like, think of it as like a Pokemon Go collectibles characters type of game where you collect these characters that can battle. You can play PvE mode or player versus environment or against other players, and they have certain strengths and then you're battling kind of in like a turn-based sort of RPG style. And the team actually founded the game, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and then a few things came together.
Yeah, they were building for a while. Yeah.
This summer, like early this summer, that really just made this the absolute first success of blockchain gaming. And it was a few things. So how does blockchain get involved with Axie? I think it has one of the deepest integrations of blockchain tech of any game. They're minting their characters as NFTs on the Ronin blockchain, and then which is their own blockchain, and then they also have tokenized economies. And they did, and their tokenomics, I would say, is the first iteration of what I think will be kind of like a lot of experimentation in how to design game economies in the token blockchain world. They have 2 currencies. They have AXS and they have SLP. And in the traditional gaming world, essentially, AXS is kind of treated as the hard currency. They're the ones that's like it's meant to govern, I think, the game, but also in the traditional gaming world, it tends to be one that's like you can actually convert dollars into. And in the traditional gaming world, something like a soft currency is one that is an in-game currency that you don't necessarily are able to buy, but actually like the game maker can print an unlimited supply of, and they use that to balance the game economy. And this was an extra step that Axie had incorporated into their game. So SLP is something that's earned, and also the thing with SLP that Axie enabled is this play to earn concept. And play to earn in the AAA world, sort of Web 2 gaming world, it has been a concept for a long time. People are willing to basically grind in the game in order to collect items or help somebody progress that somebody else is willing to pay for. But it's always been an informal economy for the most part, and kind of a gray black market that actually the Axie Infinity plus the YGG and other sort of Yield Guild ecosystem all formalized with blockchain. And as a result, you had people in the Philippines was the first emerging market to kind of discover this, that discovered an ability to actually make way more than minimum wage. At the beginning, it was like $2,000 a month, something like that. Minimum wage in the Philippines, like $300. And then it just spread like wildfire, word of mouth, referral in the country. And lastly, they moved from Ethereum to their own Ronin blockchain. Suddenly, there were no gas fees. It made microtransactions on the game actually accessible to a lot of people. And all of those things helped take off that game. And so that's why they were successful. But I think there's a lot of reasons why I think that we'll see other types of experimentation with new games that are going to come out over the next like 12 to 18 months.
We kind of just made a shift talking about NFTs and, character traits into like a full-blown mini economy, right? Which also goes to show like the broad spectrum of what we mean when we say crypto gaming, because it's so broad.
It is, yeah. So I think the key question we kind of want to hit at is, we've described Axie. It's obviously integrating crypto economics directly into games. Again, a new, novel, potentially powerful thing. We've seen Axie's growth, phenomenal growth, frankly. But maybe, my head as a little bit of an outside looking in skeptic is like, how are they getting this money to pay for these players? Where's in the play to earn economy? Is that a sustainable economy? Is that flywheel actually going to last for several years? Or are they subsidizing it with some subsidy of tokens they're giving away? And when that subsidy ends or that token supply ends, what happens then?
That's a really key question. So when you think about whether Axie Infinity or a blockchain game is sustainable, you're asking, is the economy sustainable? And so that has to do with kind of a balance of play to earn versus maybe play and earn, or like normal players. What are you getting from play to earn? A classic play to earn player is somebody who they're playing to earn, as in the alternative is minimum wage, driving an Uber or Grab, you're working at a restaurant, etc. And so they are a player that is coming into the game in order to make minimum wage. So they're actually extracting dollars out of the game. And so you have viral growth, because obviously if they can make more money playing a game than like flipping burgers, like anybody would do that. I would do that. And so that's why like it's a fire user acquisition strategy. But then what are you getting? You're getting a player that needs to make a minimum amount of wage. And so you need to balance this out. So let's say Axie Infinity has something like 2 million DAUs right now, which is phenomenal. And in an extreme case, right, 100% of their players are play to earn. And if they're earning on average, let's say like $200 per month, then per month you basically need to provide $400 million of revenue to the game. And that's going to come from, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. That's going to come from a few sources. It's going to come from players that are actually just putting money into the game. It's coming potentially in the future from Ronin, right? Revenues. Or it's coming from, you now have a base of 2 million players that are unbanked. A lot of them have not traded crypto before. And so I think Axie Infinity team has a lot of inbound from financial services and traditional finance firms that want to sell services to these people. But it all needs to add up to, in this hypothetical case, $400 million. And so that's where the question of sustainability comes from. I think like for a sustainable game, you can't actually have probably more than 50% play to earn players for you to grow this user base to the tens of millions, eventually hundreds of millions, because you need to balance out this game economy eventually. Or perhaps you have a blockchain that is actually a DEX and you have a lot of other protocols, and it's subsidizing the entire game economy. And so the game is actually in service of your L1 blockchain. I think that personally, Ronin's probably the most valuable asset actually that Axie Infinity Sky Mavis has. And so I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out.
I think the interesting tension is that like there's on one side, there's like crypto native approach, right? Which is like Axie, where you like go and you build out your own blockchain and you do all of that. Or there's like the more, like look, you play Call of Duty, I play Red Dead, like they're like done by traditional AAA gaming publishers, and they do that, they do the narrative, they do the hook really, really well, right? And that's what makes it fun. So in your mind, like the tension between the two, obviously the gap is quite big. Like where do you really think crypto gaming will land on to be really sustainable and successful in the long run?
Yeah, I think the next generation of blockchain games that you'll see are going to be more of teams with traditional gaming background that knows how to make these deep games that then are also artfully balancing in blockchain, whether it's like tokenized economies or sort of NFTs with meaning like in the game. That is sort of like the North Star for this. But, you need to hire game designers to help you build the game, or you have like these AAA gaming teams that are still learning how to do crypto. Actually, both things are quite hard. When you see the two teams sort of come together, the talent on both sides, that's where you're going to get, I think, some of the magical games that are going to come out maybe in 18 to 24 months time, which is just a game like any other ones, but with blockchain tech that really deepens the economy, like deepens the meaning of owning your items in game, and also allows players to like trade items with each other, and potentially, maybe this is a phase 3, the interoperability of items across games. I think we're quite far from that. I think people are working on it, but that'll be kind of like the third phase.
I'm just curious. We look at the traditional game developers, building traditional games and how they might be able to incorporate crypto economics or NFTs or something into those games, or the crypto native path, right? Which of those two do you think is going to be the first one that really captures mainstream attention? I mean, Axie might already be there, but I still wonder, like in your mind, which one is actually, do you think, going to win?
Yeah, I would say that Axie Infinity has already, they basically have blazed this trail of blockchain gaming for everybody, right? And I think a lot of eyes are on where they evolve. I think that they're pretty much the only blockchain game operating at scale right now. And so will they have competitors in kind of 12 months, 18 months time to compete from a attention perspective, and also proper games that embed, blockchain? Absolutely. The next wave that I'm seeing coming up to speed right now are traditional gaming teams that are learning crypto, but I think they're probably, some of them are underestimating the difficulty of building that Web3 community, but that's going to be a learning curve for them.
So in your seat, as an investor who, spends a lot of time on the intersection of crypto and gaming, what are some of the things that you just feel like are still so lacking?
Well, I think first and foremost is I can't wait for these games to go live. There's so many awesome ideas being built right now, but it takes years
Yeah.
to build great games. And so to build great games with embedded blockchain tech, it's going to take years. So I'm really excited to see these games go live. The area of I'm spending a lot of time thinking through, and also with a lot of gaming founders, is tokenomics.
Yeah.
I think, again, this is an area where Axie Infinity has, again, been a leader in thinking through how to have a duo token currency in a blockchain game. But I think there's a lot of other experimentation. For example, multiple token currencies in the game, adding a stable coin into the game, right? These actually add a few elements. So on the one hand, it's deeper. You have faster velocity. You have people who are trading the tokens that may not be playing the game. There's a lot of added impacts to that. You also have some irreversibility, right? If you kind of put release code that's going to allow a bunch of people to buy, I don't know, a bunch of NFTs, then you actually can't reverse that very easily, like you put in a Web2 game. And so I think these are things that game makers will need to have a lot experiment, and there will be trial and error, and there'll be things that don't work. And so game economy design is an area, I think, of huge fascination for me, and we're absolutely at the ground floors of doing that.
If you could paint a little bit of a picture for how the gamer themselves, their experience with the game changes in this utopian future where we have a crypto economic hook, we have NFTs built in. Like, it's a little bit hard to talk in the abstract about it without maybe a concrete example. So I'm wondering if you have a way to paint a picture for me as a gamer. What changes when I think about a traditional Web2 game versus a Web3 game? What are the actual fundamental differences as a gamer?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you're building a new space MMO game. I think MMOs is one of the most fascinating areas to include it, because they are the closest to the metaverse or digital economy today, right? Whether it's Eve or World of Warcraft or another MMO, and so like MMO games sometimes take 5 years to build. So as you're building towards it, maybe you will launch some NFT ships for people to start buying. Like, these are kind of maybe a couple of rare ships, more powerful ships, and then some basic ones. And some are more rare than others. And then you're also sort of dropping some of the commodities, like the resources that you might need to build these ships in your game. And then when you launch the game, so like how, again, I always love like EVE Online as an example, because I think that when I think of the metaverse, I think it's the OG metaverse. It's as close to a true digital economy as we ever have had. It's a game that's been out for over 10 years, I think like 15 years. And they actually had their biggest year last year, which kind of shows the longevity of some of these games when designed correctly, right? And so today, I joined a guild, in this case, corporation, and I'm going to join as like kind of like an ICE, like a lowly person in this guild. The guild leader is going to assign me tasks to do, and that might be just like grinding for more resources in order to build a specific part in a ship. So if there was blockchain technology embedded in that, right? Maybe like as a guild, I launch my own token in this world, and then I'm going to sell some of these tokens to this other guild, and suddenly I have, I can build these ships, and I'm going to battle because I think I have like a really cool strategy, and I'm going to do better than a lot of other things. So this accelerates my progression in the game. And also, with this token being traded, and with items being traded, the economy is much deeper. And so I have a much more liquid market to sell my own ships, my own resources as a guild. And that just, again, makes this entire ecosystem feels that much more real, and more fun, hopefully, engaging for players.
Well, so what's funny? So even though Justin doesn't proclaim to be a gamer, he's really into board games, and he spends a lot of time studying Settlers of Catan
much time.
strategy. And so, I feel like maybe if we bring the massive multiplayer online environment into a Settlers situation, I can see Justin really grinding, to get his resources and expand the land and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, what it kind of does, what I'm hearing, right, that the meta thought here is it just adds a whole new toolbox to the metagame theory, to how you can, the economy behind your guilds, how you can, it's actually more like real life, you know? You're adding the financial dimension to it. You're adding other hooks to it as well. So it makes the game more complex, but also potentially a lot more exciting.
You think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, honestly, kind of food, shelter, earning, these are all sort of core pillars of that. And so actually the concept of money, of real money to a game is as an extension. I think it's a necessary component to having the game feel that much more real. And so as we're building towards this hypothetical metaverse that feels like a real world sort of digital world with consequence, with reputation, then the financial aspect of it is just very natural. And so to your question, like it just adds that level of realism to the game.
Are you also as excited about the composability aspect? Because what you're describing so far can be all in a self-contained ecosystem.
Yeah, so composability is interesting because I think there's a lot of ideology around NFT gaming items being composable across game. I think that's very cool for a player. So I would say if I buy a skin or like a really cool skin for my avatar, and I can bring that avatar across a couple of games, I want to bring my cool hat or whatever with me. I paid money for it, and like I'm very proud of my hat, and I want to do that. Or like take one step further, I buy a sword in one game, can I play in another game? There's multiple real world limited sort of challenges with that. One, like games are built on different game engines. So if your game is built on Unity versus Unreal, like how do you actually port that item over to another game? Challenging. Also, once the game actually has an ecosystem of, let's say, 100 million players, they are not incentivized to another game vampire attacking them by like composing interoperability of core items in their game into a much smaller one. And so let's say some legendary sword in my game, why would I actually want to extend that item to another game?
Good point.
Because and so actually the game maker is not incentivized to promote an interoperability. And so that's why I think of it as a third phase, because I think it really takes like a fairly idealistic game maker to want to open up their game economy. But I think there will be people who will do that eventually. And I think maybe like Loot, some of these other kind of more community driven like sort of gaming projects start pointing to that direction. I think we'll get there, but I think that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Loot because that's kind of a canonical example of gaming items that are intended to be composable, but you're pointing out some structural challenges that I think we're going to hit along the way.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot to chew on here.
I know. So maybe one last question for you, Amy. What game are you most excited to see go live in the next 18 to 24 months?
So our first blockchain gaming investment is going to get announced in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I'm really excited about this game because it actually incorporates.
I know, spill the tea.
It's okay. It's a safe space.
A lot of these concepts, where you have kind of like basically like a shooter game on top of a 4X land game. And so there's like land battle component and ownership components to it, but then also it's like an intense like shooter elements with like team play, PvP style. So with NFT items and skins. So I think you'll see it's an example of what I call kind of full tokenized full blockchain adoption in a game. And so I'm really excited about that one, and just a lot of others that we're seeing in the market right now.
All right. Well, that's as much as Amy will tell us. I got it. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for taking the time.
This was great.
This was so fun.
Keep Coinbase Ventures in mind, too, because we want to invest as well. So just, we're interested in gaming, too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to the Around the Block podcast from Coinbase. Be sure to listen and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Catch us on YouTube.
Don't forget, we also have a landing page. It's at coinbase.com/aroundtheblock.
So exciting.
Yep. We have the latest updates, news. We have our blog. So don't forget to check that out.
All right. Catch you next time.
Today's conversation is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or investment advice. Actual results may vary materially from any forward-looking statements made and are subject to risks and uncertainties.